Life Audio.
Welcome to the Crosswalk Devotional. We're glad to have you listening with us. Today's topic is about trusting in and relying on God's protection. We'll return with the devotional after a brief message from our sponsors.
At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than money. It's a way to support the people, causes, and community you love, because helping you put your faith into action is at the heart of what we do. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Did you know that the Salvation Army produces podcasts in both English and Spanish? One of those shows, Heartbeat, is a 1-minute show about real life. This show comes out twice a week and touches on topics that affect everyday Christians, from finances and prayer life to dating, marriage, and mental health. Here's a clip from our latest episode.
The list goes on and on. It can be challenging to take a break from all the noise. And when you do stop, you get anxious, worrying you're going to miss something. What would your day look like if you intentionally took a break and unplugged? Instead of endless scrolling on your phone or tablet, you put it down and you take the time to settle into the peace of God's presence. Share what's on your heart and listen for what's on His. You may be surprised in what you hear.
Listen to the Salvation Army's Heartbeat wherever you get your podcasts or visit salvationarmysoundcast.org.
God's Protection in Times of Crisis, written and read by Jennifer Slattery. At that time I commanded Joshua, "You have seen with your own eyes all that the Lord your God has done to these 2 kings. The Lord will do the same to all the kingdoms over there where you are going. Do not be afraid of them. The Lord your God Himself will fight for you." Deuteronomy 3, verses 21 and 22. This was the message God gave our family years ago when my husband transferred into a toxic work environment where certain individuals made it their mission to get him fired. 2 years prior, he'd left the company to work for their competitors and had returned with a demotion that quickly turned into a promotion when railroad police escorted the former shop director off the property on numerous counts of fraud. Unfortunately, this left my husband with the difficult task of leading numerous workers who'd benefited from their previous boss's corruption. They weren't pleased with the necessary changes Steve implemented, nor the faith that drove him to do so. The union rep even went so far as to email the company president with a list of grievances, which he then tacked to the community board in the break room. But while this was a stressful time, we chose to believe that God would bring good from it. And He did. The Lord protected my husband, provided for our family, and allowed those watching to catch a glimpse of Himself and His ways. This has long been God's pattern. Whereas we might prefer a trouble-free life, it's often in the seasons of hardship that our trust in Him grows the most. He'll often remove those things that increase our self-reliance while allowing those things that deepen our dependence, because He knows that is the only way we can thrive. That always is and always has been His heart, to see His children living completely free, thriving. We see this in His interaction with the ancient Hebrews. The early books of the Old Testament record their story. To paraphrase, God used a man named Moses to liberate His people from 400 years of slavery in Egypt and to bring them into an intimate relationship with Himself. He wasn't only breaking their physical chains, He was also seeking to free them from the shackles around their souls. The men, women, and children who lived through the Exodus had experienced years and for some decades of significant chronic trauma. This hindered their ability to trust the Lord and Moses, their leader, and their capacity to envision a hope-filled future. Adding to this the fact that they'd spent their lives prior absorbing the influences of growing up in a pagan culture where people worshipped quote-unquote gods thought to be selfish, vindictive, fickle, and prone to jealousy. Considering their background, their tendency to respond to frightening circumstances with a panicked and pathological fight for survival, makes sense. As I've discussed numerous times on the Faith Over Fear podcast, throughout their wilderness journey, the Lord was teaching them that He was their provider who they could trust. For 40 years, He'd remained tangibly present, faithfully led them each day, satisfied their hunger and thirst in miraculous ways, and protected and defended them in times of danger. By the time we get to today's verse, those who left Egypt as adults have died. Their children, now grown, have not only witnessed 4 decades of God's faithfulness, but they also witnessed and experienced the painful results of their parents' perpetual lack of faith. Moses reminded them of this in his end-of-life address. Now, the people were about to enter a land the Lord had long promised to give them under a new leader. Moses, the man who courageously confronted Pharaoh, demonstrated an intimate relationship with God, and performed numerous life-saving miracles by the Lord's power, of course, wouldn't be joining them. Therefore, they had ample reason to feel afraid, but even more reasons to trust in God's goodness and steady care. Moses reminded them of this in the passage surrounding today's verse. When confronted with an approaching army, Moses told Joshua, his mentee, quote, "You have seen with your own eyes all that the Lord your God has done to these 2 kings. The Lord will do the same to all the kingdoms over there where you are going. Do not be afraid of them. The Lord your God Himself will fight for you." Deuteronomy 3, verses 21 and 22. You have seen with your own eyes all that the Lord your God has done. The people could anchor their faith in experience and in truth. Moses assured them that they could trust the God who had faithfully cared for them for the past 40 years would continue to do so, reiterating His promise to protect, defend, and provide for His children. Intersecting life and faith. Although they no doubt felt afraid, they didn't have to allow their fear to consume them or halt their steps, because God was bigger and more powerful than any threat they might encounter. Almighty God Himself would fight for them, and He did. He'll do the same for us. He sees the battles we face and how overwhelming they feel. He understands our fight or flight responses and those things that challenge our trust. And He speaks to our frightened hearts, saying, "Do not be afraid. I love you. I'm with you, and I'll fight for you today and always."
The Crosswalk Devotional is a production of Life Audio and Salem Media. If you liked what you heard today, please take a second to rate and review this podcast in your favorite podcast app so that more listeners like you can find the show. For more faith-filled, inspirational podcasts, visit us at lifeaudio.com.
Need more of God's power in your life? I'm Christina Patterson, host of the Teach Us to Pray podcast, providing practical tips on how to grow your faith through prayer. Subscribe at lifeaudio.com.